Alrighty, so now we've finished all of this embroidery here for our heart, and we need to make the little section here at the top. And you can see it's made with size 15 in the gold beads, and it's actually beading over the top of this D-ring, which is what gives it that lovely dimension. So we don't need to bead over this section because that's all going to get concealed inside the heart here. So we sort of need to work out whereabouts this is going to be. The best thing we can do is to trim around this so it gives us the shape that we want, and then we can work out where we need to bead over for our lock section of our little heart locket. So first thing to do is to cut this out. And when you're cutting out your bead embroidery, you need to be really careful that you don't cut into your stitches that are holding the beads down on the edge. So a lot of people cut from this side. I don't, but I just be really careful where the angle of my scissors. I like using these same scissors that I cut my file line with. These have got a blunt tip, so I can cut right into the corners of things, like the corner in this heart, knowing that I'm not trimming something that I don't want to. Something else that is really good to be aware of is you don't have to cut it all out in one piece. It's always better if you're trimming something quite intricate, if you trim around it, you know, just a basic cut first, and then come back in and cut more of the detailed pieces away. It's much easier. Also keep in mind, you want your scissors to be at a right angle to your work. Try not to cut with your scissors like this. That's more likely to cut into your stitches. And if you cut like this, you're probably not going to cut much away. So just try and keep them at a nice angle. And when I'm trimming, the other thing I like to do is I tend to move the beadwork and keep the scissors in a more comfortable position. There's no reason why you need to twist your hand around like this to get into those spots. Make it as ergonomic and easy for yourself as possible. So I'm going to start here because for me, this is the simplest spot to start. And I'm just butting the edge of my scissors there up against those beads. Now you notice I'm just going to cut across the top there where it's a bit trickier. Trim away the bulk of this stiff stuff and get that out of the way. Now I can come back in here and do some of the more intricate things. So I'm going to cut from this side first, and you'll see I'm doing gentle little snips. Coming in this side now. I am putting my scissors on a slight angle, but that's only because I'm coming in from the other side of the work. There we go. Now have a look at your work. Is there any spots? To me, that bit there is standing out, needs a little bit of a trim. The rest of it's not too bad. For what we're doing, we don't need it to be, you know, super, super close. There might be a little bit I can skim off there, and you can just come back in just gently and just take a little bit more off there if you wanted to. The other thing I like to do on the edge of my work, and I'm going to be edging this with black seed beads, is I like to color that edge in with a Sharpie texture, just so that it blends in and disappears. So you see really fine little trimmings that I'm just taking off there. I'll take this little bit off here where it's a bit unco. And again, I'm moving the embroidery. I'm not moving the scissors angle so much. I'm making the scissors in my hand as comfortable as possible, and I'm moving the beadwork around. Now this bit's hard to trim in, that bit there. I'm actually going to turn that over and just gently trim a little bit more off there. I can see the stitches that way too. I know that I'm not chomping something that I don't want to. A couple of fluffy bits there I'm just trying to get. Now, say you can't get your scissors into a spot. Little trick that I can show you here with your thread burner. Keeping in mind you should be doing this in a well-ventilated area because it does put off a few fumes. But you can use this little guy, the thread zap, to just melt away any little bits of fluff or anything that's in a spot that you don't want it to be. Be super careful because it goes fast. So you're always best to do a little bit at a time first. This sort of helps seal the edges of the work as well, but just takes away smooths out any of those rough bits that you can't get to easily with the scissors without damaging the work. And you can see I'm not even really touching that. I'm just letting the heat from the thread burner just warm that up. It's taking off the little fluffy edges. And I am super happy with how that looks. See how it's quite cupped? We're going to use that shaping to our advantage to hide our little D-ring. And now we can bring this in and have a look where that's going to sit. Now we want this to be concealed behind here, so we need to make sure for our sizing that that bit is going to be covered. So what we can do is we can get a gel pen, and I couldn't find my white one. I do have a peachy pinky one here, and we can just make a little mark of where this heart is. Now I'm pressing that down into position, and I'm just going to draw a line of where that heart finishes. There we go. So now I know where I need to bead to. My beads for this section here only need to cover this part, and the rest of it will all be concealed later. So we're going to get some beads now. Got the needle threaded, ready to go. Pop this on my finger. And this is where I'm going to start. Now, again, like when we did our bead embroidery earlier, when we were going around a curved area and we sort of had to fan the stitches out wider on the outside and bunch them in closer in the middle, we're going to be doing the same when we're covering this. And we're simply going to be laying a row of beads over the top of this D-ring here. So we've only just glued this into position now. I'm just going to do some quick, oh, my thread's a little bit short. I'm going to do some quick stitches just to tack this D-ring down and hold it into position. So about 1 centimeter apart, I'm coming up one side of the D-ring and I'm heading down the other. And what this does is it just secures it. I mean, it's already secured with the glue, but this just makes sure that it's not going to move and it's going to stay there while we're sewing and not be painful, essentially. And they're quite big 1 centimeter stitches. And this thread's quite short. What I might do is just finish tacking this down all the way around and then start a new thread to put my beads on. So you see I'm coming right up as close as I possibly can to that D-ring. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want it to have any play at all. I don't want it to have anywhere that it can move. All right, so you can see my stitches there, just a quick ticky-tack into position. I'm going to knock this off and we'll start a new thread. Okay, so I'm using that gel pen line that we made with the top of the heart before, and I'm just bringing my needle up roughly where that is. The knot I did didn't come through. Doing one stitch over the D-ring without any beads, just to secure the start of my thread. Okay, so now we need to work out how many of these beads go over the top of this little bar and sit nicely. So I'm just putting the beads on and just checking how many I need. So I've started with 5. I think it's going to be 7 size 15 seed beads. All right, so I've got 7 beads on now, and I'm going to bring that down just on the other side of the bar and pull that up nice and tight. And I'm just having a look here to see if that's the right amount of beads. I think it's pretty good. Now we want the next stitches are going to need to fan out a bit. So you might find that in the occasional spot, you'll need stitches on the outside of here, but not in the middle. And I don't know if I've done that. I've done it here. I've added a little row here. I'm not going to need it everywhere because it's not a huge curve. So I'm just trying to work out a good position here. I've brought my needle up. There. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seem to be the right amount of beads. A little knot there. Oop. Stitch down the other side. Okay, so you can see those beads starting to go into place there. So again, I'm taking a stitch further away here and I'm scrunching them up in the middle there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you might hit a point where it doesn't want to go around the curve very well. Haven't hit that point yet. If you have, it just means that your stitch on the, like you haven't allowed enough freedom on the outside here between them. There's a little bit of, oh, it's almost a bead size there that I've left. But on the middle, those beads are really kissing together. So just keep in mind that you might hit a spot where it starts to look funny and the beads want to go straight. They want to marry up next to each other nice and straight. And we're forcing them to go around a bit of a curve. So we need to give them a bit of allowance to go around that curve without them bunching or sitting funny. Did I put 7 on? I put 6 on then. Oops, go back a stitch and add a bead. And I've got a little knot there where my needle doesn't want to move. Right, so just undo that one. Thread my needle again. Pick up the missing bead and do that stitch again. All right, that's looking better now. So you can see I'm always putting tension on my thread here with my pinky. I'm just going to carry on covering the little bar. Now what you can do every few stitches, just to give yourself good tension, is you can come back here and do a couple of stitches on the back. And you can also tie a little knot. So it just means that those beads are all secure. I'm also trying to make sure that I don't have any stitches that are in this center area here, because we're going to be trimming all of that away. So we don't want any stitches in that area. And we're going to be trimming around here. So you want to keep your stitches as close to that D-ring as possible. All right, so I'm just going to finish covering over this with some speedy beading, and I'll see you back when I have finished covering it. Okay, so I just want to show you a trick here. I really want my beads to be starting to come at this sort of an angle, but they're wanting to marry up to the beads that are already there. So I'm going to put some in the gap here. I'm only going to pick up 5 beads, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to pass down through 2 from the previous row. I'm going to pull that up and see how that's starting to fill that gap and starting to get those beads to travel in a bit more of this direction. Now the next one, let's see if the next one starts to sit a bit nicer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 beads. You can see, I think that's really helped by adding that little wedge of just 5 beads in the gap. And I can't add a whole 7 in that gap because they're not going to fit on this side, but they do fit on that side. So that's something you can do to fix any gaps you've got in the outer edge. I do have a spot here where I could potentially fill that gap with some beads too. What we'll do is we'll keep going all the way around here and we'll come back and do that if I think I need to. All right, so I deliberately left a little gap here because I wanted to have one of those gaps to come back and fill. This side seems to have smoothed round a fair bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to gently bring my needle back closer to where I want it to be. And then I'm going to bring my needle up in that little gap. And it's a smallish gap. We might do 4 beads. Give it a go, see how it looks. Bring the 4 beads down, and I can use my finger to push them in the gap and see how they're going to sit. Might be 5. No, I think 4. I think 4. So now I want to sew through 3 from this other side. We've gone through 3 beads there from the one next to it. And when I pull that up, you can see those beads want to cinch into that gap. Now I reckon it needed 1 more bead. So now we're going to go back and fill the bead in that gap. Coming up the same 4 beads again, because they're on a curve now, I need to do it in 2 steps. Gone through 2, gone through 2. I'm looking for a smallish bead to fit the gap. I'm going to go down 3 from the one next to it on the other side. Okay, you can see that bead has sunk into position, and I am super happy with how that looks. Here is another spot. Oh, we can fit more in there too. Bring my needle back along through there. Like I said earlier in some of my other videos, I like the beads to be able to sit super snug next to each other. This is a smaller gap again. It might be 3 beads to fill that gap. Lay them into the little wedge. See if they fit. It's actually 4. Picking up 4 and going through 3. And pulling them into position. Now you can see that's sitting super nice. And I can't see any of that D-ring under there. There's one spot here where I must have perhaps missed a bead. I'm going to come back and add one in there too. Stitching just through the backing behind where the D-ring is so that I don't snip off any stitches that I don't mean to. It's getting quite tricky to get in on that angle because I've pulled my thread so tight, it's created lots of tension in there. All right, so I'm coming up in that little spot where the gap is, picking up a bead, and then I'm going to carry on through the other beads that are there in that row. Just means I don't have thread showing because they're going into the beads. Okay, so that looks, I'm pretty happy with that. Now we can get our heart and just place that over the top and see what we think. Now, see how on either side here, got a little gap here where the beads, the bar is showing. On this one, what I did is I just did a few beads in that gap to fill that spot. But what we might do is just attach this onto here first. Now, I want to put a little bit of padding in that gap so that our heart doesn't not be puffy in that gap. And what I'm going to do to try and make it even, so I'm just going to get a piece of felt. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've just got a little piece of stiffened felt and I'm going to just trace the top little section of the heart here. Get my gel pen, just tracing a line around what I've got there. I'm going to cut that out. And I'm going to have a look at the space I've got here. I'm using my thumb to sort of feel where the bar is. I think it's going to be across here like this. This is going to fit in here. Feeling where the bar is. And just making a little piece of felt to fit inside the D-ring there. And the corners are rounded, so I'm just rounding those off a little bit. Rounding it off to get that to fit in that little gap. That's pretty good. No one's going to see it. It doesn't have to be a perfect piece of felt. Hopefully you can see, probably pretty tricky on the film to see that in there, but that's in there now. Black on black's not always easy to see. All right, so that just gives me a little bit more oomph to hold that into shape. Now, the other thing I want to do is, before we go any further, is just color in the edges of this white. It's going to stand out like a sore thumb if we don't. Just using my permanent marker. Trying not to color the beads in. I've colored a few there. You can wipe it off while it's still wet. You can use black foundation in your work, and I do in a lot of things, but not if I am transferring a picture on. You need the white if you want to be able to see it. Okay, so see what a difference that makes with that black on the edge there? I think it makes a world of difference. I much prefer the black there. I'm not going to put that straight down on my bead mat because I don't want the permanent marker to touch my bead mat and transfer. So just be careful of that.